Shalom, this is Amonute Tayac of Piscataway, your friendly neighborhood shaman, Sophia Spiritualite, and we are here for a discussion about the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Actually, I'm going to title this video Water Wars, because this is what this is really about. This is about the war of the water. Not just the water on the outside, but the water on the inside. And basically how our ancestors essentially left us clues and keys on how to win the war, and how to fight this war without even really engaging, by using some of the things that we historically had access to. And so this is kind of like a summary of a bunch of videos I've been meaning to put together. Stuff has been coming in. I started talking about stuff last year and I never quite got back to it. So we're going to summarize a lot of that here. So we're going to talk about Francis Scott Key. We're going to talk about the Key Bridge in Maryland specifically. We're going to talk about Anacreon. There's a band of Indians, the Americans, that we're going to talk about. There's an individual known as John Brown. There's a song called John Brown's Body, which is related to both May Day and Memorial Day or Decoration Day. And so we're going to tie a lot of stuff together, and hopefully this will make sense to people by the time I'm done. This is probably going to be a longer video because we got a lot of sources to go through. So put me at 1.5 speed if necessary. And if you think there are people who might be interested in learning this kind of history, this kind of stuff that we go through over here, sort of more technical in nature, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the above. So first, let me tell y'all a little bit about Maryland. I am a native Marylander on both sides for 10 plus generations that I can track. So there are very few people who are native Marylanders who have the authority to comment on this kind of stuff. So as a native Marylander, I have done a lot of research and whatnot into the history of Maryland. As a child, I competed in the Frederick Douglass oratorical contest, so I'm very familiar with the speeches of Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass is from an area where my dad is from. Actually, his black wife, Frederick Douglass' black wife, is from the next city, if you want, loosely speaking, because there's not really cities in the shore, but the next city over from where my people are from. And I actually believe Frederick Douglass is from Tayac, where my people are from, and part of it. So I'm familiar with this. Now, I got to describe this sort of history of Frederick Douglass, because if you don't really understand who Frederick Douglass is to black, modern black history, then a lot of stuff is not going to make sense. Frederick Douglass isn't everything. He was the quote unquote king of the Negroes, hands down, hands down. Now, I also have a theory that Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln looked very similar, and this is why when Lincoln was actually going around trying to be president, he and Frederick Douglass were always seen together. Well, I think it was because they looked similar. And Frederick Douglass did a lot of campaigning for Lincoln, if you look into that. But and let me back up. Let's talk about Frederick Douglass in relation to Baltimore. So the story of Frederick Douglass goes like this. Frederick Douglass was born on a plantation in the eastern shore of Maryland, Salisbury area, around, like I said, Tayac. His wife, black wife, was from Dalton, which is the next, like I said, city over. And so when Frederick Douglass got to be a certain age, he was sent from the original, please close the door, close the door. Thank you. He was sent from the original plantation that he was at to Baltimore. Now, If you've ever heard me talk about Baltimore, I will tell you, Baltimore is the most racist place on earth. Nancy Pelosi's father was the mayor of Baltimore. So Baltimore is also heavily mob affiliated. Okay, it's mob ran. Nancy Pelosi's father and her brother were both the mayor of Baltimore, actually, to be specific. And there's a lot of controversy around that particular time period. I'm not going to get into all that right now because it's not relevant to this story. But that's just to let you know, it was the most racist place. It is the most racist place on earth because of these mob affiliations. And these were not people who wanted to acknowledge our people as the people that they said they were. So these are people who are, I will call them enemies. Please close the door. Enemies of our people, okay? So now you got, please close the door. Now you have Frederick Douglass. He's out here in Baltimore. He's living with this couple. He's a like a house slave, okay? And so you somehow have this story. Now this is where you have to say in the story, okay, something is not right. There's something else going on. You have in this story Frederick Douglass, who doesn't know how to read or write, allegedly, goes to Baltimore, and somehow they say from some street boys learns how to read and write. Now, and then he begins to give speeches. Now, this story makes zero sense. Number one, like I said, my dad, he grew up around these kind of people. When they first did integration and he went to the integrated high school, he told me many times he had to fight these people every single day. Every day he was fighting these people. They did not want him at that school. Now, mind you, he was a athlete, so he played football, but they did not want him at that school. He said he was fighting these people all the time. So me growing up having that information and visiting, where he's from and all of that, I'm like, well, wait a second. How do you have this black slave being taught how to read by some neighborhood boys? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And this is not like specifically saying all people from Baltimore are racist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Baltimore is the most racist place on earth because of the imperial royalty that came in and how it was colonized and all of that. There are lots of good people from Baltimore, but you have to understand the history is based in severe racism. And so even people who are from the South do not understand how racist it is to go and be in Baltimore. The prime example of that is right now you have been crucified by the media, Mayor Brandon, who is the mayor of Baltimore. Now, compared to the previous history, okay, can you just lock the door on your way out? Let him have it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's not going to hurt himself, but y'all go out and please lock the door because I'm trying to do something. And y'all should be able to self-regulate for a few minutes. Please lock the door. You have Mayor Brandon, who, I talked to people who are from Baltimore. They wanted him to be mayor because the previous mayor, was it Marilyn Mosby or whatever? The previous mayor was severely corrupt and literally did nothing. If you were following this in, 2016, which many of you probably weren't, there's an individual known as Scott Pressler. He was told that there was like this huge area in Baltimore that needed to be cleaned up. So he organized a group of about 200 people and he went in and he cleaned up Baltimore. Now, this is a homosexual white man who now registers voters for the Republican Party. So this is what people were doing. This is kind of how all this thing got started. So the people of Baltimore elected this mayor, Mayor Brandon. He did not go along to get along with the good old boys in Maryland. Now, mind you, I'm from Maryland. I'm very familiar with Maryland politics. I know a lot of these people because where I'm from in Maryland specifically, a lot of these people came through because it was like basically the only black owned restaurant in Maryland. Now, mind you, why are there no black owned restaurants in Maryland? This was before, if you're from there, that homosexual black man got his restaurant, Carolina Kitchen, right? But we ain't from Carolina, we from Maryland. And so where I'm from is a lot. Anyway, it's the point of the matter is they actually elected someone who would work on their behalf, and that's exactly what happened. This guy, he goes in there, he starts working on their behalf. He doesn't go along with the good old boy network, and what is happening right now? He is being eviscerated by the Democratic media and also the know nothing Republicans who just want to have someone to blame. They're going right along with it. When in fact, there is a black governor whose name is Wes Moore and a lieutenant governor who's a Miller. And if you're from Maryland, you know exactly what I mean when I say that's a Miller. These people they're the governor and lieutenant governor. This blame should be placed squarely on them, because they're the ones who is in charge of the waterways. The mayor is not responsible for the waterways. It doesn't work like that. That would be state. And therefore, the state is responsible for this. So the governor and lieutenant governor are purposely allowing this young black man, who's not even that young, he just looks really young, to take the fall for what they are doing with their incompetence. Mayor Brandon doesn't hire any of these state officials. He don't oversee any of the state officials and what the state officials do. And if you're from Maryland or the DC region in general, you know there's always a fight between who is running a state resource, who is running a county resource, who is running, like, why are they not blaming the mayor of the government of Baltimore County? No, they went directly for the mayor of Baltimore, who during a press conference, if you go and listen to the clip, they're trying to ask him when they think the port is going to be reopened, and he's like, there's people still in the water. I'm more worried about the people in the water than I am about when this port is going to be reopened. Which is right. And so this is who the state of Maryland Democrats are allowing the blame to be put on. This young man that's the mayor. Not the senator who is the representative on the federal level, not the governor, not the lieutenant governor, who are 100% responsible for this. No. Let's blame the mayor, who has no power to hire or fire, who could have been telling them, hey, there's some dangerous things going on here. We might want to deal with this. He could have been saying all of this. Would have been responded to? No, because this is a good old boys network. So this is just proof that the good old boys network has nothing to do with skin color. It has everything to do with whether you play by their rules or not. And this is what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that we are playing by their rules, and so we're good boys and good girls as long as we're playing by the rules. But as soon as you start to say, hey, I'm worried about the people, no, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. So I just have to bring that up. So back to Frederick Douglass. I'm sorry. So this story goes... So this is my belief on this story, because I have been screaming this story from the rooftops since 2016. I said the story don't make no sense. Like, it doesn't. So this is what I believe. I believe they brought that boy in there, Frederick Douglass, as a sex slave to the wife. And the wife probably taught him how to read in the middle of having him service her or whatever, something like that. This is my belief, because as soon as he had an opportunity, he ran away from them with his black wife and they went to London. Now, you may be thinking, how the heck did they get to London? What is this about? And that is where we're going to discuss the Americans and how the British, after establishing slavery in America, tried to play the other side of it and say, well, what if you get here, you'll be free and we'll protect you. This is what they did historically. So the story of the Americans is going to show you how that process works. Now, I did talk about Anacreon because we're going to go in a lot of detail about that. So I'm not going to get into too much detail about that here. Or Francis Scott Key. But I'm trying to summarize the other points. So Now, this whole thing with John Brown's body. So, one of the rallying cries of our people was this song, John Brown's Body, which was sang to the tune of Battle Hymn of the Republic. And we have used this song as a catalyst to free our people many times. Now, you may or may not remember, I'll reshare the video. I had made a version of Battle Hymn of the Republic and sang it down by the water, put it into the ley line. This is when I was supposed to talk about this stuff, and I forgot to come back to this because this is really important. This is what our people do. We sing songs, we honor the dead, always have, and things happen on our behalf. This is how it works. All this stuff is kind of tied together because of the timing and stuff. And so we're going to go through this, but it's very important that you understand, if you don't go along to get along, you get called out, no matter what color you are, but especially if you're black and you're in a primarily mobbed up area like Maryland is. If you're not going along with the program, they're going to throw you under the bus every single time. And then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to do whatever it is that you do from there. So, okay, let's get started with, we're going to start from the beginning here. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Maryland. This is why I started with Maryland. I had read in an article, maybe 6 months ago. Yeah. Like 6 months ago, about how much exports Maryland has with Israel. Professional Victims Unit number 1. Okay? And I was appalled. I was like, are we keeping anything for ourselves? We exporting everything that we have? So since then, I found out recently, like just amongst this research for this video, and it wasn't like all in one place. This is like people on Twitter talking about it, right? So I found out that the Baltimore Harbor is the number 1 import for light vehicles, like from China, from Japan, stuff like that. Number 1 import for light vehicles. It's the number 1 export point for coal to Europe, specifically coal towards Europe. And it's also a huge export, I say, for Israel, light cars, and coal towards Europe, right? Also, we export a lot of sugar. The Domino sugar factory is in Baltimore, and it has a thing. And they had one of these brown sites that they were converting into warehouses and stuff that was already $2 billion have been spent that is now basically on hold. Oh, let me talk about the collapse a little bit before I go into this. So everybody saw the collapse. It happened at 1:28 a.m. I actually happened to have driven by this area over the weekend. I went to visit a friend in Pennsylvania, and I had to go by this area. So over the weekend, I drive by this area, and then on Monday night, when I'm securely back in the Sunshine State, this collapse happens, 1:28 a.m. Now, most of the cars were not on the bridge because they were doing road work, and so they had it blocked. And then when they started getting the Mayday calls, they just stopped all the traffic. Okay, so there wasn't a lot of cars on the bridge. There may have been some that people saw, but honestly, the bridge was mostly cleared off. There were 7 individuals that work for a construction company on this bridge. Now, what you guys need to understand about that is these 7 individuals were not Americans. They were from El Salvador, Mexico, whatever. And so one of the things that Maryland did with their racist asses is when, as soon as they could, they started going down into Mexico, El Salvador, and these other places and sponsoring whole cities. And what they would do is they would bring those individuals up from those places to work in the factories and stuff. So you have whole towns in Mexico where they take all the women for the summer, basically, when we have crab season, bring them to Maryland and have them pick the crabs. How do I know this? Because my grandmother was one of those black women who was in the factory picking crabs. And then when they decided to go with the race warriors, like I've been calling them all this time, and brought them up, her job was gone and she had to go and do something else. So this is what I mean by it's just pure racism. Like, they just really hate our people there, even though that is our land. They really don't want our people there. And so this is a warning to you race warriors that are coming up from the South. Okay? Two of your brethren's bodies have been found, and 3 have not been found. 2 of those 7 people survived. 1 without any injuries at all, and 1 who was in bad condition. That's it. Stop sending your people up to this country to take jobs from black people. Black people have no problem doing these jobs. We was built for these jobs. This is our land. Okay? Stop it. This is a warning unto them. This time it was just 7. And 2, all praises to the Most High, survived. Okay? 3, they can't find their bodies. 2 are gone. So, one of the problems they're going to have when they start actually looking for these bodies for real is that a common thing that was done in Maryland by the mob is that they would throw people off a bridge, throw them into the deep water, throw them off a boat. So when they start looking for these people's bodies, there's going to be a lot of crimes that get solved. A lot of weapons that have been thrown in the water used to commit crimes. James Comey and crew. Lots. Because this is what people did. They would get on their little boats, go out in the middle of the water, toss somebody's body over. Well known in Maryland. Maryland is mobbed up. Well known. Okay? So this is really bad. This is why they don't, if people are not really following this, because it's really nonsense. They have not even sent anyone like onto the ship to see what's going on with the hazardous materials that are on the ship, because when they start investing, first of all, Maryland is huge for human trafficking too. So they don't know what they're going to find on this boat. If they're going to find people, body parts, they already know it's hazardous materials for sure, but they don't know what else is on these things. And yes, the boat was piloted by a Ukrainian registered in Singapore. Do with that information what you want. So I had to just throw that in there about these race warriors, because they're being given a warning. Turn around and go back home. Deal with your countries. It's a warning unto you to do it, because they were working with a construction company. Why the construction company only hires them? This is what Maryland is like. This is why anybody with sense has to leave, because they won't hire you. They don't want black people. Now, I'm from Nigga County, where they don't have a choice but to hire some black people. But even still, if they can hire a demonic brother or sister, a fellow comrade, they're gonna hire them first before they hire one of our men who won't allow them to treat them like trash. They won't do that. So, all right, now let's get started with these articles. All right. Nicknamed the Old Line State in the Free State, located in America's Mid-Atlantic region, Maryland shipped $17.8 billion worth of products around the globe in 2022. Mind you, homelessness is off the charts, hunger is off the charts, everything is off the charts. This stuff, resources could be used to help our people, and ain't being used to help nobody, okay? The dollar amount results in 36.6% rise from $13 billion. You have to wait. 36.6. You should. I'm in the middle of something, so you have to wait. Nobody told you to do that right when I'm in the middle of something. So you tell Destiny I'm doing something. She has to get up and do it. Tell her I said so. Okay, the dollar amount results from a 36.6% rise from $13 billion in 2019. Year over year, the overall value of Maryland's exported goods increased by 8.6% compared to $16.4 billion in 2021. Maryland ranks around the bottom of America's 25 biggest exporters by state, lagging front runners including Texas, California, Louisiana, New York State, and Illinois. The value of Maryland's exports equals 0.9% of United States overall products. Based on research, Maryland's exported goods represent 4.8% of the state's total economic output, or real gross domestic product in 2022. So how could you ask her? You said that you asked her and she said no. So
yeah, she just fell back asleep.
Divine, you have to wait. I don't know what to tell you. I'm literally in the middle of this. So you have to figure something out or you have to wait. All right, given Maryland's population of 6.165 million people, its total 17.8 billion in 2022 exports translates roughly to 2,900 for every resident in the old line state. That dollar metric exceeds the average of 2,700 per capita in 2021. Maryland's unemployment rate is this. Okay, so here's Maryland's top exports. Natural gas, which is 2.9 billion, or 16% of total exports. Civilian aircraft, that's because Lockheed Martin has a big factory there. 1.8 billion. Coal is 1.4 billion. All of Europe's coal comes from the Maryland port. Diagnostic reagents, so stuff for labs, 1.4 billion. Iron scrap is 278 million. Large helicopters, again back to civilian aircraft, is 257.2 million, or 1.4%. Silver jewelry and parts is 1.3%. Maryland has a lot of mines, which I didn't realize because there's none in the Negro County, but when you get to the other counties, almost all of them have mines. Modems, okay, so this is back to Lockheed Martin. Pipe, taps, vats, and similar appliances, miscellaneous military equipment. So a lot of military equipment, a lot of coal. They don't even talk about like the other stuff, the stuff that they specifically export to Israel. But let's talk about Maryland's relationship with Israel right here. I was on the floor. I had no idea that this was the case. All right. So Maryland, in 2022, Maryland exported $64 billion, which was down. Total is $1 trillion since 1996. We're 40th in trade partner. We're 29th in rank as exporter. That's because, we have $29 million in, is that million? Yeah. In military contracts. Maryland's Jewish population is only 240,000. Now, mind you, 3.9%. Mind you, we're Jewish population is 3.9% out of 6 million people. That's a joke I'm not going to make. Okay, so this is the list of the companies that have grants. You got Red Cross, Aerodyne Genomics, BP Solar, CAD Language Systems, NOAA. I'm not going to read all of them. USDA, a bunch of them. Smithsonian, University of Maryland, NIH, National Institute for Science and Technology, Indo Image Corp, FDA, Goddard Space Center, Johns Hopkins, Maryland Biotech Institute, MedStar, NASA, National Bureau of Standards, National Cancer Institute, National Institute of Child and Health and Human Development. National Institutes of Health. This is a lot. So listen, Maryland, Israel Advisory Board. While on a trade mission to Israel in April of 2013, Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley launched the Maryland Israel Advisory Board to be charged with developing business opportunities and partnerships between Maryland and Israel. When I was in college, way before 2013, when Martin O'Malley was campaigning, and I saw him, right, campaigning because I went to the University of Maryland. So he never mentioned that he was going to do all this stuff with Israel. This kind of like came out of nowhere. So, and if you don't know, Martin O'Malley was basically like the first Democratic governor of Maryland. Like before Martin O'Malley, there was pretty much no Democrats running Maryland. Basically, it was mostly Republicans. We had, a bunch of Republican governors back to back, and Maryland's fiscal house was in pretty good shape, and prices were low and all of that. And then Martin O'Malley comes in, and this is when I was like in adulthood. And this man, Maryland has never been the same since he came into office. And I'm sure it has something to do with this. This is all the different partnerships Maryland and Israel have. Okay, we have an anti-boycott law. In 2017, Larry Hogan is a Republican, but he also was a ridiculous governor. Because he's a builder, right? Anyway, all right. He prohibited all executive branch agencies from contracting with any entity unless that entity certifies that they will not engage in a boycott of Israel for the duration of the contract. Hogan stated that all future contract requests for state bids must include language for the applicant has not refused to do business with any person or entity based on their Israeli origin. The order also calls for all current state contracts to be evaluated and possibly terminated if they exist with companies that engage in the boycott of Israel. Do anybody care about the Negroes? These people didn't do. They don't care about if they do. What about minority contract? Minority contracting is not even good because it could be Africans. It could be any minority. Just means minority. They did not make any special rules regarding the black people in the state, but they made these special rules regarding the Jewish people in the state. Professional Victims Union. So, I'm not even going to read all of this. I'll put the links in here if people are interested in this kind of stuff. But look at this. They say how they profit. They say, all the innovations, dealing with agriculture benefits, other cooperative programs. I mean, this is crazy. We have a sister city. I didn't even look at this. The sister city in Israel is Ashkelon. I need to look into that. And Greater Washington is Bet Shemesh. Metea, Yehuda. That is our sister city for the Greater Washington region. Do they have a partnership with the black cities in? What about Clinton? What about Oxon Hill? What about Eastover? They need a partnership with the state. No, just whatever. All right, so let's move on. Maryland hopes to attract Israeli techs with its educated workforce and low cost of living. Yeah, right. What year was this written? 2023. Cost of living in Maryland is outrageous. All right. Let's see. Maryland is one of the highest educated workforces in the country, if not the highest. That's a great option for Israeli companies looking to move here, explained this guy, executive director at Maryland Israel Development Center. They have a development center. Founded roughly 30 years ago, it is a non-profit public-private partnership of the Maryland Department of Commerce, Israel's Ministry of Economy and Trade, and the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore to promote bilateral trade between the state of Maryland and Israel. The organization also has the full backing and support of the Baltimore and Maryland Jewish communities at large. The cost of living and ease of living should not be underestimated, he continued. Using New York and California as examples, our cost of living is much lower. Not really. There's a great Jewish and Israeli community in Baltimore, and the community feel is something we offer. Maryland is home to 42 Israeli companies, and Spear reveals that there's a recent focus on Israeli companies opening up their primary headquarters in the state. Look at this. Examples include defense company Elbit Systems and its subsidiary Cyberbit, agricultural biotechnology Evogene, and medical device company Metaspec. In total, around half of Israel's companies in Maryland are in the life science sector, roughly a third in cyber and defense. So this is talking about working from home. I'm not going to read all of this. Okay. The MIDC is careful to promote the state of Maryland as a whole and not fall into the trap of large cities in modest states acting as a de facto representation for it in its entirety. For example, the North I-270 Tech Corridor boasts one of the most impressive tech bioscience clusters in the United States, is made up of a triangle between Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and Frederick, the second largest city in the state, and only a day's drive from 2/3 of the entire American population. Holy smokes. The pull in Baltimore is strong here, but there are places not to be overlooked, that's for sure. So, in 270, if you don't know about that, most of 270 is in Montgomery County. It also goes into Frederick County, and 270 Montgomery County is the like where Housewives of Potomac and stuff like that is located. I'm familiar with that. Okay, they're talking about pre-COVID levels. Okay, so as you can see, Maryland is all in with Baltimore. Now, y'all hold on one second. I'll be right back. Okay, they figured it out. All right, so let's move on to the next part of this. So, all right. Now, we're going to talk about the War of 1812. Now, you may think, well, what does the War of 1812 have to do with anything? Listen, this war got to do with a lot. This is really the epicenter of a lot of this mess, is the War of 1812. And not the Revolutionary War, because yes, the Revolutionary War was a war between America and Britain. The War of 1812 is where Britain decided to come in and interfere. This is when they were starting to, let me just read about it. You'll see. Okay, so the War of 1812 was fought by the United States and its allies against the United Kingdom and its allies in North America. It began when the United States declared war on Britain on 18 June of 1812. Although peace terms were agreed upon in the December 1814 Treaty of Ghent, the war did not officially end until the peace treaty was ratified by the United States Congress on 17 February 1815. Anglo-American tensions originated in long-standing differences over territorial expansion in North America and British support for Tecumseh's Confederacy, which resisted U.S. colonial settlement in the Old Northwest. These escalated in 1807 after the Royal Navy began enforcing tighter restrictions on American trade with France and impressed sailors who were originally British subjects, even those who had acquired American citizenship. Opinion in the U.S. was split on how to respond, and although majorities in both the House and Senate voted for war, they divided along strict party lines, with the Democratic Republican Party in favor and the Federalist Party against. News of the British concessions made an attempt to avoid war did not reach the U.S. until late July, by which time the conflict was already underway. Okay, let me explain that a little bit. The United States government was trying to expand into the rest of the territory because, as you know, America is a huge country, right? And so when they declared independence, you can't declare independence for areas that aren't settled. It's only the areas that are settled. This is why I'm always talking about the original 13 colonies. That Declaration of Independence really only applies to those individuals who were members or residents within the 13 colonies at the time that was signed. If you want to think about it heritage wise, right? And so What Britain was trying to do was trying to say, okay, well, we lost in 13 colonies. Let's get us some more colonies. This is what these people do. So what they did was, since they had already done the thing of bringing their own people in and their own people turned against them, right? Now they said, let's partner up with some of these Indians. And so we'll just make them subjects to the British monarchy, and we'll provide them support. Because remember, at this time, Britain had the biggest navy in the world. Also going on at this time, and the reason why America was trying to provide support to France. Now, let me keep reading. All right. At sea, the Royal Navy imposed an effective blockade on U.S. maritime trade, while between 1812 and 1814, British regulars and colonial militia defeated a series of American invasions on Upper Canada. The abdication of Napoleon in 1814 allowed the British to send additional forces to North America and reinforce the Royal Navy blockade, crippling the American economy. So basically, they prevented us from doing business on the water, doing our exports. In 1814, negotiations began in Ghent with both sides wanting peace. The British economy had been severely impacted by the trade embargo, while the Federalists convened the Hartford Convention in December to formalize their opposition to the war. In 1814 August, British troops captured Washington before the American victories at Baltimore and Pittsburgh in September ended fighting in the North. In the southeastern United States, American forces and Indian allies defeated anti-American faction of the Muskegee. In early 1815, American troops repulsed a major British attack on New Orleans, which occurred during the ratification process of the signing of the Treaty of Ghent, which brought an end to the conflict. So you have, it's somewhere I see. Okay, look, let's look at this list right here real quick. Tecumseh's Confederate was defeated and dissolved. Okay, so the belligerents, you have on the side of the United States, you have the Choctaw, the Cherokee, and the Lower Creek, and the Seneca, right? And then in UK, on the side of the UK, you had Upper Canada and Lower Canada, Tecumseh's Confederacy, the Sauk, the Potawatomi. So this is a lot of tribes, but it wasn't all of them. It was just parts of them. And Spain even came out and fought on behalf, because they were dealing with Louisiana, which has a lot to deal with Florida, like the Panhandle. Let's see who Tecumseh's Confederacy is, or where it is. Oh, look at this. Tecumseh's Confederacy was a bunch of people that was over. Okay, listen to this. What? Tecumseh's Confederacy was a confederation of indigenous people in the Great Lakes region of North America that began to form in early 19th century around the teaching of Tenskwatawa, called the Prophet, by his followers. The confederation grew over several years and came to include several thousand warriors. Shawnee leader Tecumseh, brother of the Prophet, developed into the leader of the group as early as 1808. Together they worked to unite the various tribes against the European settlers who had been crossing the Appalachian Mountains and settling on their land. In November of 1811, an American military force under the leadership of William Henry Harrison engaged warriors in association with Tenskwatawa in the Battle of Tippecanoe, resulting in a definitive American victory. The retaliation for that battle, Tecumseh led the Confederation to war with the United States during the conflict, later named Tecumseh's War, part of the War of 1812. However, the Confederation fractured in 1813 following his death at the Battle of Thames. But listen, what is this Tecumseh? Was a native Tenskwatawa was a Native American religious and political leader of the Shawnee tribe known as the Prophet or the Shawnee Prophet. He was a younger brother of Tecumseh, a leader of the Shawnee. In his early years, Tenskwatawa had given the name Lalawethika He makes a loud noise, or the noisemaker, but he changed it around 1805 and transformed himself into a hapless, himself from a hapless alcoholic youth into an influential spiritual leader. Tenskawada denounced the Americans, calling them the offspring of the evil spirit, and led a purification movement that promoted unity among the indigenous peoples of North America, rejected acculturation to the American way of life, and encouraged his followers to pursue traditional ways. Oh my goodness. In the early 1800s, Tenskawada formed a community with his followers near Greenville in western Ohio. In 1808, he and Tecumseh established a village that the Americans called Prophetstown, north of present-day Lafayette, Indiana. At Prophetstown, the brothers' Pan-American Indian resistance movement increased to include thousands of followers, and Tenskawada provided the spiritual foundation. Together, they mobilized the American Indians into the Northwest Territory to fight the Americans, and they remained resolute in their rejection of the American authority and acculturation. On November the 7th, 1811, while Tecumseh was away, Tenskawada ordered a pre-dawn attack on a hostile, encroaching American military force encamped near Prophetstown that initiated the Battle of Tippecanoe. The American Indians retreated after a 2-hour engagement and abandoned Prophetstown, which the Americans burned to the ground. The battle did not end the Americans' resistance against the United States, but the prophet lost his influence, became an outcast, and moved to Canada during the War of 1812. After Tecumseh was killed at the Battle of Thames in 1813, the American Indian resistance movement faltered and eventually was defeated. Tenskawada remained in exile in Canada for nearly a decade. He returned to the United States in 1824 to assist the U.S. government with the Shawnee removal to a reservation in present-day Kansas. The aging prophet arrived at the Shawnee Reservation in 1828 and faded into obscurity. Tenskawada died at what is known as the Argentine district of present-day Kansas City, Kansas, 1836. Okay, let's I didn't read all this stuff before. Let's pause right here just for a minute. I'm probably just gonna separate this into 2 videos. This is already too long. So you have this guy. You have a group of people who were trying to fight back against the American coming in. Now, mind you, the Americans and the British are the same people. These fools think that Americans and the British are different, and they take the side of the British against America. Like, this is why where are the women at? Like, where are the women at? It should be a woman. Now I understand kind of like this whole thing with Francis Scott Key. This is what he was talking about. Okay. I don't even know what to say, man. Let me go back to the War of 1812. All right, we're not even okay. So y'all understand now the War of 1812. I just want to point out that you have all of these Native American groups that sided with the United Kingdom, and of course the United States. In response to this, when they decided to make a treaty with the tribes, of course they used these. These are the quote unquote civilized tribes, because these are the tribes that worked on the side of the United States. And the uncivilized tribes, all these ones over here, plus the other ones who didn't want to get involved, of course they will call them uncivilized. The civilized ones are the ones who work with them when they was going to battle with the United Kingdom. Father God. Okay, all right. No, wait, we gotta go back. Wait a minute. No, okay, I didn't bring up Francis Scott Key. All right. I gotta get Francis Scott Key. I'm sorry. I thought I brought it up. Wait a minute. Let me bring up Francis Scott Key. Here we go. All right, so now let's talk about Francis Scott Key. So y'all got a background on the War of 1812, what it's about, how it ended, and basically, again, what happened was you got the United States fighting against Britain, and the tribes picked sides. And a lot of tribes picked the side of the British because they were promising to keep the quote unquote Americans from infringing on their land and on their rights, even though the British were planning on exterminating these people right after this battle, because that's what the British always did. They came in and they just exterminated the people. So now you have Francis Scott Key. We're going to read this. He was an American lawyer, author, and poet from Frederick, Maryland. Now, mind you, we just talked about Frederick, Maryland being part of that I-270 corridor. That is the second most populated state in Maryland. And it's, okay. Best known as the author of the text of the American National Anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. Wait a minute, what is... I'm sorry. I just want to know what Frederick is named after. Because it's in the mountains. Okay, so they say Frederick was either named for Frederick Calvert, who was a baron of Baltimore, Frederick Louis, Prince of Wales, or Frederick the Great, Prince, King of Russia. So whatever case, it was named for one of these monarchical figures, okay? All right, so let's go back. All right. He was known as the author of the text of the American National Anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. Okay, Key observed the British bombardment of Fort Henry in 1814 during the War of 1812, the end of the war. He was inspired upon seeing the American flag still flying over the fort at dawn and wrote the poem Defense of Fort McHenry, which was published within a week with the suggested tune to the popular song To Anacreon in Heaven. The song with Key's lyrics became known as the Star Spangled Banner and slowly gained popularity as an unofficial anthem, finally achieving official status more than a century later under Herbert Hoover. Key was a lawyer in Maryland and Washington, D.C. for 4 decades and worked on important cases, including the Burr conspiracy trial. Okay, so listen. He was a lawyer, which means he was a member of the Bar Association. And the Bar Association is a British House of Royalty. It's a British House of Commons. This is anybody who's a member of the Bar Association is an agent for the British. Period. Now, if you don't know the history of the Bar Association, you join this thing. That has nothing to do with me. Look into the history of it. You have a title. You have an official title. People who are members of the Bar Association should not be in office. And they should definitely not be president. Okay? Which keeps happening and no one seems to care. All right. Okay. Key owned slaves from the 1800s, during which time abolitionists ridiculed his words, claiming that America was more like the land of the free and the home of the oppressed. As district attorney, he suppressed abolitionists, and he lost a case against Reuben Crandall in 1836, where he accused the defendant's abolitionist publications of instigating slaves to rebel. He was also a leader of the American Colonization Society, which sent former slaves to Africa. He freed some of his slaves in the 1830s, paying one at his farm foreman to supervise the other slaves. He publicly criticized slavery and gave free legal representation to some slaves seeking freedom, but he also represented owners of runaway slaves. He had 8 slaves at the time of his death. Okay, this is what you got to understand. This is the part I kept asking, why did he get on this boat? What was he doing on this boat? The story of him being on this boat is that he was negotiating the release of a friend. I believe he was negotiating the release of a slave back to a slaveholder. Why is that? Because what the British was doing, as I started to mention, is they were going to these tribes and they were promising them freedom. And we'll see that when we talk to the Americans because it describes it specifically. They were promising them freedom. So Then I thought also, why would they let him on the boat to negotiate such a release? Well, he was by trade a British loyalist. So you have an individual who was clearly a British loyalist living on American soil, playing both sides of the fences. This is what the British do. They tell you, "Oh, I'm on your side." Then they go to them and say, "Oh, I'm on your side." You think AmaruKhan is the king of playing both sides of the war? The British are the king of playing both sides of the war. They're doing that with professional victims unit. They're doing that with sweaty t-shirt man. They're doing all of this stuff right now. This is what they always do while hiding their hands so that you don't see they're trying to play one side against the other so that they can have a superior position. This is where AmaruKhan got it from. This is who is running AmaruKhan. I've been saying this, but I'm hoping now people will understand it. The British monarchy, as it stands, is not your friend. They are trying to figure out how to get us out of here. Even so much so that they let one of the heirs to the throne, Prince Harry, marry a so-called Negro. Why would they do that? So that at the time they could get us Negroes to be sympathetic towards the monarchy so that they can continue their power. All of this got to do with them trying to keep their power. This ain't got nothing to do with us. We really is just like an afterthought, which you'll see in a minute when I talk about the Americans. So Francis Scott Key more than likely was trying to negotiate the release of a slave back to the owner because the slave had run away and on the boat and blah, blah, blah. They're trying to negotiate the release. And he saw this thing happen. Now, the even more important part of this story is let's look at the song To Anacreon in Heaven. Now, if you have not read all the verses of the Star Spangled Banner, I'm not going to go through that. That is, nobody says the other verses. They only say the first verse. I'm not going to go through all of that because I feel like this video is already going to be too long and it's really easy to look up all the verses to the Star Spangled Banner. So I'm encouraging you, go and look up all the verses to the Star Spangled Banner and tell me what you think it's about. Because if you think it's about freedom, it ain't no such thing about freedom. Now, you know what? Let me just, for posterity's sake, in case they take it down, we're going to look at some of the lyrics. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Okay. Here we go. Lyrics. All right. It has 4 verses. The second, third, and fourth are not performed. Let's read the second, third, and fourth. Y'all know the first one. On the shore dimly seen through the midst of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread and silence reposes. What is that breeze? What is that which the breeze or the towering steep as fitfully blows, half conceals, half to close? Now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines on the stream. Tis the Star Spangled Banner. Oh, long may it wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. I also think that this was taunting because it said in the very first article about the war that it was really a draw. So I think this is like, the hand is free and the helmet is brave. He was taunting. This is a taunting thing, okay? And where is that band? The band of Indians, okay? Who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and country should leave us no more. You're talking about the Indians fighting against the Americans. Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the Star Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free, the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand. Now, he wasn't even for free men standing. So he's talking about the colonizers coming from overseas to America and making a life for themselves. Those are the free men he's talking about, not the Negroes, okay? Between their loved home and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven rescued land. May the heaven rescued land. You mean rescued it from the slaves who was really the rightful owners? Okay. Praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. The conquer we must when our cause is just. And this be our motto. In God is our trust. Not in God we trust. In God is our trust. Well, which God? Which God is he talking about? Now they say, oh, he's an Episcopalian, blah, blah, blah. He was a member of this Anacreon society. And when I read to y'all about that, y'all see what I mean. And the Star Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. Okay? All right. Now, let's go to the next part of this story. All right. The song, To the Anacreon in Heaven. All right? Listen to this. Now, remember, Francis Scott Key was a member of this club. Now, they say he's an Episcopalian or whatever it is they want. He was a member of this club. Wait till you hear about this. The Anacreonic song, also known by its incipit, To Anacreon in Heaven. And incipit is basically the what is that thing? And incipit is the beginning, the opening line. So you call it's called the Star Spangled Banner, right? But you may call it, oh, say, can you see? Because that's the incipit. But really, the Star Spangled Banner is known by its decipit, which is the end of the song, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. Okay, if you say either that, the incipit or the incipit, you know what song it is. That's what that basically means, okay? All right, so this was the official song of the Anacreonic Society, which was an 18th century gentleman's club of amateur musicians in London, composed by John Stafford Smith. To the tune was later used by several writers as setting for their patriotic lyrics. So they're taking it from this gentleman's club to patriotism. All right. These two included songs by Francis Scott Key, most famously in his poem Defense of Fort McHenry. The combination of Key's poem and Smith's composition became known as the Star Spangled Banner, which was adopted as a national anthem in the United States in 1931. Not until 1931. This was unofficial until 1931, okay? All right, listen. The Anacreonic Society was a gentleman's club. A gentleman's club? Yes, a gentleman's club, okay? Of the kind that was popular in London in the late 18th century. In existence from approximately 1766 to 1792. Okay, anyway, keep moving. The society was dedicated to the ancient Greek poet Anacreon, who was renowned for his drinking songs and odes to love. Its members, who consisted mainly of wealthy men of high social rank, would meet on Wednesday evenings, Wednesday being Mercury being Thoth, you know, the first day of, not the first day of creation, but the day that life was created. Time, the day that time was created was Wednesday, okay? Evenings to combine musical appreciation with eating and drinking. The society met 12 times a year. Each meeting began at 7:30 with a lengthy concert featuring the best performers in London who were made honorary members of the society. Does this not sound like the Free Golfs? Hey, we're having this party. Come on through. We need you to be a part of it. People come to the parties. They do their little performances or whatever. Next thing you know, they're forced into the freak offs. Well, hold up. I didn't. Well, now you're an honorary member now because you done been initiated in. You drank this drink. We got you all messed up. We got you on tape. Now you a member of this club. This is where this comes from. Nobody's covering this part. The society came to an end after the, now this, mind you, up until this point, it's all men, just like the diddler and his stuff. It was all men, okay? The society came to an end after the Duchess of Devonshire attended one of its meetings. Because some of the comic songs were not exactly calculated for the entertainment of ladies, the singers were restrained, which, displeasing many of its members, they resigned one after another, and a general meeting being called, the society was dissolved, allegedly. It is not clear when exactly this incident occurred, but in October 1792, it was reported that the Anacreonic Society meets no more. It has long been struggling with symptoms of internal decay. Nah, they didn't want to be respectful to women. They was dogging these women out. In these songs and being very rude. Now let me tell y'all the lyrics to the song. We're not going to go through all of this. Let's talk about the lyrics to the song. Okay? And you're going to see it's very, I'm not going to read all of this because it is bad. It's bad. This is a really bad song. Okay? To Anacreon in heaven. Now, mind you, let me tell, well, I think I have who Anacreon is. We'll do that next. To Anacreon in heaven, where he sat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that their inspirer and patron he would be when, okay, good job. When this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian, voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you, like me, to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus vine. Now, that is very sexual. No. That is very sexual. They are literally talking about a sexual act, okay? The myrtle, which is round, with Bacchus vine. That's extremely sexual, okay? Through the news through Olympus immediately flew when old Thunder pretended to give himself airs. If these mortals are suffered their scheme to pursue, the devil, a goddess, will stay above stairs. Hark, already they cry, in transports of joy, away to the sons of Anacreon will fly. And there, with good fellows, will learn to entwine the myrtle of Venus with Bacchus vine. Okay, I'm not going to read all of this. That's enough. This is okay. All right, let's talk about Anacreon. I hope that's what's. Oh no, wait. We gotta talk about Anacreon. Sorry, I must have skipped that. Oh, it's not linked here. Here we go, Anacreon. All right, let's talk about Anacreon. All right, Anacreon was a Greek poet, notable for his drinking songs and erotic poems. Later, the Greeks included him in the canonical list of 9 lyric poets. Anacreon wrote all of his poetry in Ionic dialect. Like all lyric... I know, okay. Its name is Anacreon. Like all early lyric poetry, it was composed to be sung or recited to the accompaniment of music, usually the lyre. Anacreon's poetry touched on universal themes of love, infatuation, disappointment, revelry, parties, festivals, and the observations of people, everyday people and life. Okay, let's talk about the themes and subjects. Anacreon's poetry touched on universal themes of love, infatuation, disappointment, revelry, parties, festivals, and observations of everyday people in life. It is the subject matter of Anacreon's poetry that helped to keep it familiar and enjoyable to generations of readers and listeners. His widespread popularity inspired countless imitators, which also kept his name alive. Anacreon had a reputation as a composer of hymns, as well as those of bacchanalian amatory lyrics, which are commonly associated with his name. 2 short hymns, Artemis and Dionysus, consisting of 8 and 11 lines respectively, stand first amongst his few undisputed remains as printed by recent editors. But hymns, especially when addressed to such deities as Aphrodite, Eros, and Dionysus, are not so very unlike what we call anacreontic poetry as to make the contrast of the style as great as the word might seem to imply. The tone of Anacreon's lyric effusions has probably led to an unjust estimate by both ancients and moderns of the poet's personal character. The triple worship of the muses, wine, and love ascribed him as his religion in an old Greek epigram may have been purely professional in the last 2 cases as the first, and his private character on such points was probably neither much better nor worse than that of his contemporaries. Anthemius remarks acutely that it seems at least to have been sober while he wrote. His character was an issue because, according to Pausanias, his statue on the Acropolis of Athens depicts him as a drunk. He himself strongly repudiates, as Horace does, the brutal characteristics of intoxication as only fit for barbarians and Scythians. Of course, Scythians as in... Anyway, Okay, so we have this guy, Anacreon, okay? He's a drunk. All right? He's a drunk. What else about Anacreon? He doesn't have a patron. He is not like someone who only wrote about one of the gods. He doesn't have a patron, and he's a drunk, okay? So this is who the Anacreonic Society used to memorialize their organization. Not only that, this is who Francis Scott Key used to memorialize the Star Spangled Banner. A drunk party person who was only focused on, who was only sober as long as he was working. And as soon as he was done working, then he was not sober. And if that doesn't describe Americans and how they view Americans, I don't know what else to say. What is that? Oh, when you get home, you have a beer and people drink all night. This is typical American stuff. So they literally brought down the spirit of this man and put it on the American people using the Star Spangled Banner. So another thing I want to point out is Anacreon was one of the nine, I think they said nine major poets, right? He was one of their poetic hierarchy. So you can also look at him as being similar to, in the Roman Christian pantheon, to Peter and Paul, who were basically, as we talked last year when we canceled the contract, the dumb diverses, they had used Peter and Paul to pre-forgive people for committing crimes. So they did the same thing with this Anacreon lyric by saying the myrtle of Venus and Bacchus vine is basically taking you back to before you were born and making you pure. That's essentially what they did with this song. So this is why AmaruKhan feels like it has the right or the responsibility to police the world, because it has already been pre-forgiven. So just like the Pope pre-forgave people for their crimes, they use this song, the Star Spangled Banner, to pre-forgive people for their crimes. It's the same energy. And unfortunately for AmaruKhan, that those contracts have been canceled. You can't do that. The Dumb Diverses is way older than the Star Spangled Banner. So allegedly, I mean, who knows for real. So no, you can't like pre-forgive somebody when in fact they're the ones who are committing the crimes, killing people, doing all this stuff that they know that they're not supposed to do. So, that goes without saying. Anacreon and his legacy is trash now. So let's talk about the Americans. So, as you all should know by now, our tribal nation that I came up with, that I'm going to be organizing, is called the Americanas. And that's based off of my research on the gods, and I had done a video about that. And I said I was going to do another video, and I will, specifically about this thing. But I want to point this out here about the Americans because it will explain how the British were approaching these different tribes that were here and getting them to come to their side. Okay, so the Americans were African American Marines of the War of 1812, former African slaves who fought for the British against the U.S. in the Corps of Colonial Marines, and then after post-war service in Bermuda, were established a community in the south of Trinidad in 1815 and 1816. They were settled in an area populated by French-speaking Catholics and retained cohesion as an English-speaking Baptist community. And by Baptist, they literally mean Orthodox Baptist, which is a focus more so on the baptizing aspect of traditional orthodoxy. Okay, it is sometimes said that the term Americans is derived from the local patois, but as many Americans have long been in the habit of dropping the initial A, it seems more likely that the new settlers brought that pronunciation with them from the United States. So, you don't say America. You most of the time say America, especially, in the South. And it also goes to my theory that they put the daughter first, Mary, and that's also where the name come from because it's the same. Okay, though some of the company villages and land grants established back then still exist in Trinidad today. So you have somebody like me who who's from the Chesapeake Bay region, and people are always asking me where I'm from. That's because they took some of my people down to Trinidad, down to different parts of the islands, which you're going to see in a minute. During the American Revolution, the British recruited freedmen. They just said they recruited slaves. You see? Anyway, for service as colonial marines. During the war, that was during the American Revolution. During the War of 1812, there was a policy that was somewhat similar, except that freedmen were treated as free as soon as they came into British hands, and there were no conditions nor bargains attached to the recruitment. So what that means is that as soon as you got into the British hands, you were considered free. So now consider Francis Scott Key negotiating for the release of someone who the British now considered free, but was actually a slave. Now that story makes sense. Like the way that they're telling it doesn't make no sense. Now you have a story that makes sense, okay? All right. 6 companies of freedmen were recruited into a corps of colonial marines along the Atlantic coast from Chesapeake Bay to Georgia. So this is why you have so many people who look like us down in the islands, because some of us were already there. Some of us were taken from here down to there. And we intermix because we're all the same people. Not necessarily all the same tribe. Well, we're all sons of Shem. If you want to go the Shem route, which I just feel like when we go the Shem route, we get a more accurate view of what's going on. Going the 12 tribes route is much, much harder because everybody's so intermixed. But you can tell the sons of Shem from the sons of Japheth and the sons of Ham, for sure. These are very phenotypical, different looking people. But when you start talking about the 12 tribes, they all kind of look the same. So you're talking about dividing down the sons of Shem into these different groups. Plus, there were some people who were not specifically in the 12 tribes that would still have the blessing of Abraham. So, I mean, it's just me. I feel like I'm moving towards, are you a son of Shem? Are you a son of Japheth? We good. The sons of Ham, we not good. Okay, that's literally how I'm personally just breaking it down. And remember, Francis Scott Key was one of these people who was gathering up blacks and sending them to Africa. So you also have a lot of our people that ended up in Africa looking like the Africans. Because this is what these people were doing. So you have a lot of confusion going on and a lot of untruths. Okay? After the war, the British settled these colonial marines in British Empire colonies, including Canada, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. Now, they just talk about Trinidad. They don't mention that in this one. They mention the other one. So this is why you have our people in Canada, in Jamaica, and in the Bahamas that originally came from the Chesapeake Bay back during this time, shipped over to Jamaica, shipped over to the Bahamas, shipped up to Canada, and then when they try to come back to America, they make it sound like we're not from here. No, we're from here. Y'all the ones that shipped us all the way around, okay? Vice Admiral Sir Alexander Cochrane, on taking over the command of the British forces on the North American station, 2nd April 1814, issued a proclamation offering a choice of enlistment or resettlement. So this was all towards the end of the war. All who may be disposed to immigrate from the United States will, with their families, be received on board His Majesty's ships or vessels of war, or at the military posts that may be established upon or near the coast of the United States, when they have their choice of either entering into His Majesty's sea or land forces, or being sent as free settlers to the British possessions in North America or the West Indies, where they will meet with due encouragement. Okay? Cochrane's recruitment of the colonial marines, mostly in the Chesapeake. So literally, we're talking about the Francis Scott Key Bridge, all this area, okay? Went doubly against the orders from the British government, who had instructed him to accept volunteers for military service only from Georgia and South Carolina, and to send all such volunteers away immediately for training overseas for the army. So he just did whatever he wanted, right? After the end of the war, the colonial marines were first stationed in the Royal Navy Dockyard, Bermuda. Although they had signed on for military life, they rejected government orders to be transferred to the West India regiments and finally agreed to settle in Trinidad and Tobago. So they were trying to send them to West Indies to be trained, and they were like, oh, no, that's not what you promised. We'll go to Trinidad, okay? So the governor of Trinidad, Sir Ralph Woodford, wanted to increase the number of small farmers in that colony and arranged for the creation of a village for each company on the Naprima Plain on the south of the island. Local planter Robert Mitchell managed the establishment and maintenance of the settlements, petitioning the governor for supplies when needed. So this talks about all that. Let's talk really quick about the religion. Many of the original settlers were Baptists from evangelical sects common in places such as Georgia and Virginia. The settlers kept this religion, which was reinforced by missionary work by Baptists from London, who helped organize the construction of churches in the 1840s. The villages had pastors and other religious elders as authority figures, and there was a rigorous moral code of abstinence and Puritan work ethic. African traditions were influential too, and these included the Gayep system of communal help, herbal medicine, and Obeah African tribal science. A prominent elder in the 20th century, Papa Nezer Samuel Ebenezer Eliot, who was born in 1901, who was a descendant of an original settler, George Eliot, and renowned for his ability to heal and cast out evil spirits. His syncretic form of religion included veneration to Shango, prophecies from Obi seed, and revelation from the Psalms, the spiritual Baptist faith legacy of the American community. Okay, so here you have people taken from the Chesapeake Bay to fight this particular war, which was instructed by the king. Don't take these people. Took them anyway. They fought in the war. The Star Spangled Banner is written because Scott Key is trying to get one of his people, slaves, off the boat. Doesn't matter. They do it anyway. So this is just a confirmation to me and to you guys. When I say Americana, I'm not off. I'm not going off. I'm not making something up. These people, this is what we referred ourselves as. The Americans, the Americanas, same thing. Okay? So I didn't go off. I didn't get off track. That was truly calling out into, because I'm from the Chesapeake Bay, calling out into my blood from my DNA, this particular name. Okay? So I'm going to stop here because we need to talk about John Brown, and I want to do that in a separate video because it's way too much information with John Brown to try and rush through it. So I'm going to pause this video, not pause, but I'm going to end this video here, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about John Brown's body and that relevance. So that's going to be a part 2 of this video. So I hope this reaches you all well. I hope this gives you a greater understanding of what's going on. And of course, we're going to have some more delineation in the next video. So shalom, everyone, and we'll see you soon.